Hello and welcome everybody to our Monday Facebook Live. We're very excited today to have our guest, Carly Brown, to come and speak with us about Board and Train. Board and Train is, the dog training industry, as you know, is very unregulated. So literally anybody can put up a website and print business cards and say they're a dog trainer. The world of Board and Train is even more on the scary side as far as finding a qualified trainer to help you with your dog. So this is a very important topic to us, and that's why I reached out to Carly, who is a certified professional dog trainer who lives here in rural Wisconsin, where she is the owner of the Canine Learner, and she does private in-home consultations, group dog training classes, as well as in-home board and train on her 16-acre farm. So we are going to say hello and welcome Carly.
Hello,
Hello.
everyone. Thank you for having me. Hello,
Yeah.
hello.
Thank you so much for joining.
Of
Can you share a
course.
little bit more about you and maybe how you got into dog training and why you decided to start offering board and train at your home?
Absolutely. Where do I start? Uh, Long story made shorter. How I got into dog training is one of the first dogs that I acquired with my now husband had some pretty serious fear aggression issues. And so I did a lot of research on training. I drove to the Patricia McConnell School at the time in Madison, and then I ended up meeting Jen Nagati of Wild Canine. Did some work with her, got some other dogs. We developed a great relationship, and she was amazing enough to take me on as a mentee. And I just grew from there. So I started setting up chairs and observing classes and soaking in knowledge, and then started assisting, taking continuing education, different certifications, and have just built my growth from there to where, now I do in-home. I work on a lot of fear, aggression, skills, behavior modification. Group classes are focused on fun foundation skills and enrichment focus and things like that. And what we're here to talk about tonight, I offer board and train. So about 5 years ago, I was lucky enough to acquire a beautiful hobby farm where I live with my lovely husband, 3 horses. I have 6 dogs of my own, 3 barn cats, 2 indoor cats, and whoever else shows up that day. So it was the perfect environment for me to develop that aspect of my business because I have the space to do so and bring in guest dogs to my home when appropriate, which we'll talk about, and support them in my own environment, which I love. It's one of my favorite things to do.
Great, great,
Yeah.
awesome. And just as a reminder to everybody who is watching, we encourage you guys to give us questions. And if you're watching this as a recording, please do also go ahead and put your questions or comments after the recording. We do monitor them so that we can help answer the questions or point you into the right direction. Great. All right. So what would you define as what is board and train? I know you can hear it called all different types of things, from boot camp to rehab to I can't even think of some of the other things, but that boot camp seems to be the one I hear of the most.
Boot camp's probably that hot word, which I find to be a little intense, maybe a little aversive at times.
Mhm.
Very simply put, what a board and train service is you're sending your dog to live with a trainer in some capacity and have them do more intensive typically initial training work with your dog. And so when I say live with the trainer, whether it's in their home, whether they have a building, whether they have a kennel, that can vary. And we can definitely discuss, what to look for around that. And then when I say intensive kind of deep dive, the reality is, and the goal is that if your dog is living on a daily basis with a trainer, that they're getting daily training to focus on certain behavior goals that you have for your dog.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So would it be like the trainer is training 24/7, or is it more of the trainer is training for specific periods of time, but then their dogs are also getting the trainer effect of I think we kind of naturally have a bit more structure in our lives with our dogs than most families do.
So I'm going to answer first based on, positive reinforcement and science, what I think should be happening in a board and train as far as a training schedule. So training 24/7, I think as any of us can imagine, doing anything 24/7 could be exhausting, stressful, suddenly become aversive. So really a board and train structure, when I do it, when I take a dog in my home is structured with management all the time. Enrichment is part of my day. Training is part of my day. So, training while I'm making a cup of coffee, if there's a moment that I can work with that dog. So it's part of daily life. And then when we talk about a more focused session, let's say, oftentimes for board and train, because it's geared towards maybe younger dogs, maybe puppies starting out with potty training or just wanting to kickstart foundational skills, short, successful sessions often are the best way for that learner to start to build those behaviors. So, I have a training space in my home. It's my little training room. And so I'll pop my guest dog up there with me for anywhere from, maybe 15 to 30 minutes with breaks in there. And I'll have a focus session, if I'm working on foundation skills, we'll do some repetitions, maybe a little play break, work on another skill. Mm-hmm. And then I let the dog go back to either their social play or an enrichment, or we'll do some other activity, or maybe it's time for a crate break. And I might do that 2-3 times a day, on top of all the play, enrichment, and other activities that they're doing. So it's not, and nor should it be, a flooding session. And what I mean by flooding is where the dog is just required to focus or do a skill for what we might label an excessive amount of time, because that often can cause stress in the animal. So short, successful sessions, once or twice a day with the trainer, and then a good board and train, one that focuses on positive reinforcement and science-based methods, are structuring the day so the behavior quality of the animal, of the learner, is maintained throughout the day. So, you might have a mix of very specific focus sessions, but then how that learner's day is structured is to set them up for success and for them to rehearse behaviors that make our dogs really functional in our human homes.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. What should people expect while their dog is with a board and train? Should they expect to be getting updates? Should they expect to be able to come and visit before they drop their dog off? That sort of thing. Looking for ways to look for, I guess, sort of red flags when people are shopping. They're looking for board and train options.
So when a person's, looking for board and train, they should feel comfortable with the access they have to that trainer. So there is a reality, and, for my situation, and I can speak for some of the other positive reinforcement board and train trainers in the Milwaukee area, A lot of us are doing this in our home. So your dog, when they stay with myself or some of the other trainers, they're living like one of our pets. So there are some limitations. I don't allow clients to come into my home just because that's my private space. But I have had clients come out and meet me and check out my farm. That's a personal decision of the trainer.
Mm-hmm.
If anything, you should be able to get pictures of the space where they're staying. If you want references, that trainer should be able to happily provide references of other clients who've used the service and have had the trainer work with their dog. And then what I always, for my board and train clients, is I do not take your dog and go dark. I am sending daily updates. You get pictures, you get video. You have an understanding of how your dog is doing, what we're working on, check-ins. What are we observing? What's going well? We might have an intention of what we're sending our dog there for, but they're going into a completely novel environment at times. And so based on, how that dog is coping or what we're seeing with body language and behavior, we might adjust the goals to set up that learner for success. So those conversations will be had. So there should be a lot of clarity around what the trainer is working on with the dog. Mm-hmm. I make it a point, again, to send fun pictures, different moments. And it's not just videos and pictures of the training, which is always important. That's why your dog's there. But also video and reflection of them playing with the other dogs. Or, a lot of times part of my board and train is adventuring off the farm and, mm-hmm. taking them into the world and, documenting that adventure, and if a client, while their dog is with me, messages and says, I'm going to use Fluffy because I'll just use a super, how's Fluffy doing? I make sure to respond because I want, the owner to still feel connected to their dog, because I understand, when you send away for a board and train, I, for example, have a 2-week minimum, but typically for an initial board and train, because I often get puppies or younger dogs that are looking to kind of kickstart their training. And it's just a reality that the more time that they're with me, the more we can build together. Mm-hmm. So anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks is pretty typical for an initial board and train service. But I realize that that's a long time sometimes for owners to be away from their dogs. Mm-hmm. So yeah, just feeling connected, feeling like while your dog's with the trainer, you have access, that you're seeing your dog, and not only that you're seeing your dog, but that the body language reflected in the pictures and video are of a happy, comfortable learner in a different environment. So that's really important as well.
That is so important. I think people learning dog body language is so incredibly important, because what we can see as trainers in some of these pictures and updates from dogs that are, with trainers, we can immediately see that dog is totally shut down. That dog is cowering. That dog is, that dog's not happy. And of course, pictures are always a moment in time, so
Absolutely.
It's not always like perfect. I know my dog Ed is not the most photogenic dog, and he can look like whenever you take his picture. But if you have a series of pictures to look at and the things that are going on around the dog, you can get a good idea of if this dog is genuinely happy and doing these behaviors because they have found them reinforcing, not because they have found the potential negative effects of them of scary things happening to them if they don't comply.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, and I think, some things to look out for, and, the boot camps, the different board and trains, there is a reality that oftentimes the methods used in those type of board and train scenarios are positive punishment based. So someone's wondering what that means. It's adding in something that decreases a behavior. So oftentimes that might be prong, choke, shock. So if you're looking at a website, if you're looking at pictures of what do the dogs look like at this facility, a lot of times, because people who sometimes seek out board and train, they're running into behaviors they haven't dealt with before, or they feel like they need more intensive help with, or they did get a new dog and they want just someone to kickstart everything. And sometimes you might see pictures where the dog's, sitting on a station, not moving, but they have a big stress pant, or their eyes are real big, or if they're on a tight collar or their leash is really tight. Sometimes that's a lot of the pictures and stuff that are posted for a board and train. That's often an indication of stress. Again, it's a moment of time. But I, think it's really important. And this is why I say to clients, I will send you training video. I'm going to make sure that you have the information to implement and follow through and maintain consistency when the dog gets home. But I'm also going to send your goofy puppy upside down asking for a belly rub or digging in the dirt, because that's what puppies should do. And the tail wag, and I want to see soft wiggly body language, happy soft faces, all of that. So it's a little bit more about comfort and relaxation, and the dog is happy in the training session, where I think a lot of times marketing for board and trains can sometimes be showing what our culture, society thinks of as perfect obedience at the expense of the comfort of the learner.
Right. And I also worry when dogs go to these different board and train setups for things that the owner is overwhelmed by, frequently fear and aggression, and you'll have people saying that they can rehab these dogs in their care. Then when they're using things like positive punishment on them, they're suppressing these behaviors and they're not actually helping the dog to feel better and overcome these things. And then once the dog gets back home again, then you can start to see these behaviors just bloom back again, because they're not, most owners are not willing to constantly be doling out that positive punishment to their dog. Because they don't want to hurt their dog.
Right.
So I feel like that's when there's just like, oh, it all came back again. And then, like 2 weeks to 4 weeks of this training is very expensive. So many
definitely
people,
an investment.
Yeah. And that's because of genuinely the amount of time that you are putting into it as a trainer. But it just makes me sad when I hear of those things, and then people come to me with their dog that is still fearful and still aggressive and has tried to bite somebody again, and they're like, we just spent $3,000 on this board and train, and it's this isn't working. We don't have any money left. What do we do? And I'm like, oh, that's hard. So that kind of leads me into what is appropriate behaviors that you could see as for in a board and train environment. Do you think, are there certain behaviors that go beyond fundamentals and basics, so beyond puppy stuff and house training? Are there things that you think that you could work on with a dog in your home, or maybe that others could, given the appropriate setup?
Yeah. So I'm going to speak about my traditional board and train. And the reason I mention that is one of my favorite things that brings me joy is I have client dogs that came for an initial board and train as a puppy, and they continue to come back all the time because they now are one of my farm crew, and they come back for a refresher or a quick stay, and my dogs know them and they're comfortable. So when I build relationships with my board and train clients, that often happens, which thrills me. It's one of my favorite things. But speaking of, okay, you contact me, new client, new dog, or a dog that you're now kind of like, okay, I'm looking for training help. Is board and train appropriate? My program is geared towards younger human and dog social dogs. By younger, typically it's puppy focused, but I will interview and assess the dog. So typically, might be anywhere from an 8-week-old puppy to a year, depending on that dog. And I have those requirements because, again, when your dog stays with me for my board and train, and this is similar to a lot of the other positive reinforcement trainers in the area, again, your dog is coming to live in my home. So the well-being of my home and my dogs matter just as much as the well-being of your dog. So human and dog social, meaning they've either had exposure to other dogs and that has gone well, they enjoy other dogs, or for a new puppy, we're seeing that there's no major medical issues, or the dog is looking for just well-structured, positive exposure to other dogs. So young dog, human social, often the behaviors that are appropriate for a board and train are help with potty training, puppy kickstart behaviors. So a lot of my board and trains for young puppies, yes, we will always work on foundation skills, but I sometimes do a lot of the socialization for people. So if we talk about socialization, it's appropriate exposure to different stimuli that they're going to have to handle in the world, different enrichment focus. Sometimes, depending on the dog, I will say that, like, maybe we've done some in-home work, or the dog is human and dog social in a home setting, but needs some leash behavior work. They might be slightly reactive on leash. That can still often be accommodated safely in a board and train situation. What starts to become inappropriate for board and train is typically when you start to see escalated fear or aggression-based behaviors, or something like separation anxiety. And the reality is, and what we know from science and just learning theory and behavior modification, is oftentimes if a dog is exhibiting more intense behaviors, meaning they're very fearful of dogs or people, they don't have coping ability in new environments. If you're working on separation anxiety, that is often appropriate for in that dog's environment. So sending your dog away, one, it starts to become a question that would the dog even be able to feel comfortable enough in that novel environment to handle training and learning? And how is that dog's relationship with the trainer, with all the novel dogs, things like that? It becomes a safety question, and it becomes really often a case where that's not the most appropriate learning environment to address those behaviors. And as you mentioned, board and train, it is an investment. Sending your dog, because really, that dog is going to live, so the care, the well-being, the day is focused around that guest dog. And oftentimes, if your dog is exhibiting, what we call fear, anxiety, aggression-based behaviors, a better approach would be to find a certified, ethical, positive reinforcement trainer and get on a more intense schedule with them coming to your home to work with you and your dog in your environment.
Yeah.
But cute young social puppies, send my way.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. I do worry about the dogs that have the more intense fear and aggression responses, immediately just being flooded when they go to these new environments. And the amount of time that, even if you did have somebody who was an ethical positive reinforcement trainer, and it would take a while for that dog to even settle into that environment. So then essentially you're paying to have your dog boarded and not trained for possibly a week or two,
Yeah.
until they became warmed up enough.
And there's a lot of discussion. So, with those of us who do board and train, some of us are acquiring setups and things where we could accommodate some more behaviors that fall into that category. But there would need to be a very clear discussion with the owner that, if you really feel like you need help, maybe you need an emotional break. And if the trainer feels like they can safely accommodate that dog, there is a reality that you are investing in a longer board and train to allow for the dog to acclimate to that environment, to that trainer, to possibly collaborate with a veterinarian while they're in their board and train. So those are a lot of factors that you start to think about. So it's not to say never or it couldn't be done responsibly or still with the best interest of the dog. There's just a lot more factors to think about. And when you're looking at board and train, if anyone says, I can fix your dog, 5 weeks and no, nothing to think about, or, a 2-week boot camp. All of those tend to be red flags because, as we know, behavior is always occurring and behavior modification is always a progression. So again, typically when you're dealing with, I'm going to keep using the word intense because that's what I can think of right now, and it might help people understand. But that would be things like aggression. So bite history, or your dog has, fears of humans coming into your home, or fears of humans out in the world, or if you're seeing severe leash reactivity, meaning that you have concerns that if your dog got off leash, that there would be safety concerns around them and other dogs. Again, working in that dog's environment and working more intensely with the owner of that dog is often more appropriate, again, for in-home. Just because in those cases where safety is a big concern, it's really important that often the owner is deeply involved and well from day one. Where the board and train, a lot's done. There's a lot of information given back to the owner. Part of my board and train is you get an immediate session when I do drop off. And then oftentimes when I work with clients in board and train, they understand that it's kind of a kickstart. And then we follow up with in-home after, or I have board and trains who might come for that initial 2 to 4 weeks. They get skills to get them started on their goals. And then we set a schedule, whether it's follow-up in-home or a few weeks later, after they've had time to rehearse what we've already been working on, the dog comes back for a follow-up board and train if that's the style of training that they really enjoy. But in no way is the owner not involved. And that's really important. That's one of the biggest things, because a lot of times I think people misunderstand where they think, oh, if I do board and train, my dog will just come back and I can be pretty hands-off. It'll just, kind of come to me on a silver platter per se. Yeah. That is not accurate, because it's really important, even if your dog works with a trainer, learns a lot, that you are as consistent so your dog maintains the behavior in your environment and with you. If it helps, I equate it to if I went to a health retreat in Utah in the desert, and drank smoothies and did yoga every day, which just sounds fabulous right now. But if I came back and started, maybe eating my cheese and drinking my beer again, while that retreat was not beneficial, am I maintaining the results?
Right.
Probably not. So if
Yeah.
that helps at all, that's how I often
I
explain it
love
to
that.
people.
That is a perfect, perfect analogy. I absolutely love
Right.
that.
Okay,
I'm gonna use that one. For
no
sure.
judgments if you just need a week away, but just know that consistency is what
Right.
really counts. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Because it's, even in regular training, not board and train, just, in group classes or whatever, people, the question inevitably occurs where they ask, when can I stop paying my dog? When can I stop carrying around food? When can I stop when do they just know it? And, it's always hard for me to say, hey, if we were teaching our dogs to dig, sniff, run after critters, yeah, you could stop very quickly because that's self-reinforcing. But when we're teaching them things that we as humans would prefer, like walk on leash nicely, sit to greet, like they have to be paid for that because that's just not something that is intrinsic in our dogs. So payment and consistency is important. And yes, you can decrease how often you are paying later and vary up the reinforcement. Your dog still needs to get paid something, otherwise they will stop doing that thing that, they would prefer to bark at the other dog or pull on the leash to get to the next thing. So,
I
super.
usually joke with people that you can stop paying your dog when you start to volunteer at your job. And that's in a very loving way, but absolutely, like, especially for, younger dogs who are learning and going, people who, for example, send their puppy for a kickstart board and train. It's fabulous. I love working that way with clients. But when that dog goes home, you still have a lot of developmental periods to get through. So what people have to understand is board and train, if it's the right fit for you and your dog, can be an incredibly valuable service because it's a great socialization opportunity. It's a great way, if you work full time, it's a great way for your dog to get some more, deep dive into training and skills. And that can be really valuable. But it's not the start and finish. It's a journey. It's a part of your training journey to help you with your behavior goals for your dog.
Yeah, I love that. That's great. Does anybody here who is who's listening have you guys ever considered board and train, or have gone looking and then was unsure? We would love to hear your questions if you guys have any, or your experiences. That would also be lovely. Um, so what would you say are red flags that people should look for if you're looking on site? So body language we talked about. Um, how about credentials or education? That's always one that I'm always recommending that people check out. Are there certain things that you would recommend that they look for in particular?
Absolutely. So the credentials would be the same as if you were looking for a trainer in any capacity to work with your dog. So Jennifer, you mentioned at the beginning, the dog, industry is unregulated. So looking for a trainer that has the onus to gain education and certain valid certifications to validate that they have the knowledge about learning theory, implementing science-based behavior modification and training. So CPDT, IAABC, the Academy for Dog Training, trainers that often post about their continuing education, whether that's in the form of a certification or different conferences that they're attending. Clicker Expo is a big one. Anything that's showing that not only have they taken the time to gain knowledge, implement knowledge, and test that knowledge, but that they're also maintaining. Because, what's really awesome is, the trainers, and we have an awesome community, the trainers that are not doing one thing the same way forever, the trainers that are constantly growing in the science-based community. So looking for different credentials like that. And if you have any questions, about what do I look for, what credentials are valid, there is some great articles like in the Whole Dog Journal, Companion Animal Psychology. You can find some great articles that can guide you on different things to look for. And you should be able to ask. So if you reach out to a trainer, again, for any training service, but even for board and train, what are your credentials? What are your, certifications? That's a very valid question. You should be able to ask what the environment is, what the setup is, what the day-to-day routine is. They should be very transparent, again, about where your dog's going to be, how often they're going to be with their dog, what happens if the trainer has to leave the house for a bit. So you should feel very comfortable and feel like you have a lot of clarity around that. Body language. There's a lot of great resources out there. If you need, again, kind of clarity around what body language am I looking for, there's definitely some great sources for that. But you should be looking for body language that indicates relaxation. So loose, wiggly dogs, soft mouths, relaxed eyes, relaxed ears, dogs that aren't just sitting in the corner, but dogs that are playing or, working on different skills in different environments. Equipment is huge. So this is probably where board and train can get maybe a little controversial. I'll say that. So again, when you hear words like boot camp, I'm trying to think of other words. Really, boot camp is probably one of the biggest ones. But if you see pictures with dogs that have, a prong, a shock on their neck, please know that that trainer is using suppression. It's using positive punishment-based methods. And I'll just say I would stay away from those facilities. They don't have the ethical well-being of the dog in mind. In reality, where those facilities can still exist is people who are sending their dogs probably are stressed. They're probably in a serious situation. And they might not know where else to get help, or they might not feel like they have another choice. And that's valid. And I hear those feelings and I understand that stress. But just know that sending your dog, the fallout of that, and the quick fix or anything like that often is not accurate or fairly represented.
Yeah, I agree. And we've got a comment here that we can read. So I have clients ask me for recommendations, but I have yet to know of a non-aversive one. I live in Montreal, Canada. I heard of one where dog was sent, site shows e-collars and prongs, but person was advised that they use different methods as they train protection dogs. I've seen that where they say, we'll use whatever method we believe is needed. I see that a lot. Trainers have no credentials, and they told this person I met at the dog park that her dog will only eat her food during training. Yeah, that's the whole, you have to work to eat. Extreme. Yeah, that's sad. I've also seen when actually a recent post where somebody had posted that they were inquiring about board and train, and they were trying to ask about the types of equipment that would be used, And the trainer kept replying that we'll talk about it when we meet. We'll talk about it when we meet. Which makes me a little skeptical,
Yeah.
and it's sort of, I get that you want to conserve your time when you're talking with people, but that should not be one that you shouldn't be able to answer, or that, in matter of fact, should not be posted clearly on your website. And I followed the
Completely
site and
agree.
it was not. So those, I feel like, are people who are out to literally make money because they just want to get in your house to sell you something and, get you to buy.
Yeah, and I think it's something we deal with in a lot of different training realms. But when you're feeling really stressed, I think we hear a lot, when I just want to save my dog, when I'm dealing, those are serious. And again, that's a hard situation to be in. But as we know better and what science tells us and what we understand about how to work on those behavior issues, suppressing the dog for 3 weeks is not a long-term solution. And I don't say that just out of opinion. There's a lot of evidence of why that's not a solution. And, just like you said, Jennifer, any marketing, any, training style aside, when we're dealing with behavior, any trainer that claims that I can fix, solve, wrap it up in a bow in 3 weeks and give it back to you is not accurate. And you should seriously question if that's the path that you want to follow. Because for board and train, for in-home, it's a collaboration. And an ethical, knowledgeable trainer will start the skill and learning for you, will empower you to be able to work with your dog, will collaborate, will address environment, enrichment, will have a goal of setting you up for success. Because the goal is that even with board and train, if you send your dog, if you're a fit for that service, that's a kickstart. That is a chunk of time to add to everything that you're already doing. So it's in addition, it's in support of. It's not a quick fix. It's not a end all be all. It's not a one and done solution when we're dealing with our canine companions.
Right. Yep. And I think that's the very important part that people should be aware of, is that you cannot ethically make guarantees in behavior. We can, as professionals, give you estimates based on the history and the information that we have, but they are living individuals, and each individual is going to learn at a different rate. So,
absolutely.
Yeah.
And other things, the training style and training methods should be very clear, whether on the website or, again, if you contact that trainer, they should very clearly, eloquently, confidently, freely, whatever you want to say, really advocate for their training style. And if you're unclear, or, that's not forthcoming, or, again, if they guarantee a quick fix, those are all, I would say, red flags to pay attention to when seeking out this type of service.
Good. All right, Allison's got a comment for us. She says, "Thank you. I often tell clients that board and train is fabulous for laying a foundation, but that they will still have to put time into training."
Yes.
Enrichment. Yeah.
Yep.
Good. And it's all about
Absolutely.
laying the, giving people those expectations. And I think that that's a very important part. I love that you do that, Allison. That's fabulous. Because I'm sure it is very easy for people to feel that it is an easy button, that it'll just get done and I won't have to deal with it again. But it's not like that.
Yeah.
It's like your spa analogy. Yes.
And here's one thing I want to be clear about. To never feel shame in asking for help. I mean, especially, puppies are crazy. Dogs can be like, we take it so lightly sometimes, but living with another species is no joke. So it brings immense joy to support people as they learn how to live with this new being in their home. So don't feel shame. It can be a great option. If you want to have a trainer come in your home every day of the week, go for it. If you want to send for board and train a few times a year, it can be awesome. But when you do it out of, I understand that this serves my dog is comfortable in this training realm. I learn a lot and I maintain consistency in between. And what that does for the dog is it really is a value add to their behavior quality. And as an investment, you're getting a lot back when you look at it as, I'm hiring a coach, I'm hiring a trainer to support me in everything that I do at home with my dog. So I want to be clear that no shame. Like, I think that, if you're realistic about, I brought home a new puppy, I've got kind of a busy work schedule coming up. I found this, great board and train in the area, and I can get that support. You're really setting your dog up for success. And that can build a great long-term relationship, to get you started on that training journey.
Yeah, I can see that for sure. And I can see how before I had to shut down all in-person stuff, one of the things I really loved doing was day training, where I would go in, I'd set up we decide how many sessions we're going to do based on what we were working on. And always we have to come up with really nice management strategies to prevent your dog from rehearsing these behaviors while I work on laying down the new ones. And then it's sort of like a cross between them doing it on their own and a board and train, because the trainer's coming into the home doing the heavy lifting, and then their job is just to do the management piece. And when I say just, that's not always easy. I know that it's not, it's a lot of work, but you at least get the training part off your plate, right? Because the trainer can be doing that, and then you can just focus on the management bit to help prevent your dog from rehearsing the behaviors that you would like them not to do anymore. So I miss that. That's what I missed. I love doing day training, all kinds of different things that I got to work on for day training.
No, that's a lot. That's a lot of fun. I have a day camp service as well, at different times of the year. And it's a great experience to build relationships with these client dogs. And then, as a result, you build great relationships with their owners. Anytime we're raising juvenile creatures, having a squad of support is never a bad idea.
Yeah, for sure. I love it. So what would you say are the top 3 things you'd love for guardians to understand about or do with their companions? So not necessarily about board and train, but just in general. That's sort of I like to call it my question I like to wrap up with.
Right. When you sent me this, I was like, how do I pick 3?
It is hard, and it depends on the week, right?
Yeah. So I think the first thing is you have to understand your dog is a dog. And they're gonna give a lot of dog behavior that we can fully acknowledge does not always feel functional as a human. But embracing the fact that you brought a different species into your home and really educating yourself on how to meet their needs as a dog. I think a lot of times, sometimes, and the cool thing is I really think that this is progressing, which is so exciting. But I think historically, when it came to training or, behavior, it was expected that the dog just needs to obey. The dog just needs to respect me. And that's not how behavior works. So embracing the fact that you have a dog and really pairing yourself up with appropriate resources and educating yourselves on ways to meet your dog's needs. Because that in and of itself is going to relieve stress and help build your relationship with the creature that you brought into your home. I think, secondly, don't phase out reinforcement too quickly. Embrace giving rewards, whether that's food reward, which is very typical with a novice learner and for a while you're building behavior and skills. But mixing up toys, access, more training. So embrace reinforcement as a part of life with your dog. You know, remember that our dog's bubble is fairly small compared to ours. So the more that we can make life reinforcing for them is really just, it should be an honor and something that we should definitely take into account when we add a dog to our house. Plus, they're so cute. You should just want to maintain reinforcement. You should want
to make them happy.
I know that's not super scientific, but all the treats. And then I think thirdly, be proactive. If you are unsure, get help as quickly as possible. You know, the amazing thing is the training world is progressive. There's people who are really educating and getting the skill set to be able to help clients and their dogs. And, you know, if you're unsure, or if you're bringing home a puppy for the first time, or you haven't had one in a long time, if you're starting to see behavior changes, or, you know, if you're questioning certain things that are going on with your dog, be proactive in getting help, because that's just going to help address the behavior issue more quickly. Or, you know, if you're bringing home a happy new puppy, it's just going to help set you out, you know, on the right path. And I think it's better, you know, if more people were proactive in getting support fairly quickly rather than waiting until, oops, I see a problem, or we've let this problem go on too long. And it's not like you can't get help then, but, you know, if you're unsure, there's a lot of great resources out there. Definitely make use of them, because that's just, again, going to help your life that you live with your dog for sure.
Well, that's great. I love all three of those.
Good. That was hard. I was like, only three. I could go on.
But they're great. You know, so understand that your dog is a dog, number one. Mm-hmm. I love that. Number two, don't phase out reinforcement too quickly, which I think is so, so important. And three, being proactive. Yes, I love it. So, hey, I love all three of those. I picked a couple for mine when I made my logoed T-shirts, and it was dogs. Oh shoot! Now I'm gonna forget it. Dogs do what works. Motivation matters, and learning never stops were my three.
I love those too. Those are great. So maybe we can do like a front and back one.
Yeah.
And then we just keep making the prints smaller as we add more.
Right. Yes, we'll just keep adding to them.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for taking the time tonight to join us and to talk about Board and Train and to help people understand what it is, what to look for, what behaviors it's ideal for, and the type of work that they'll still have to do when their dogs get home.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me. This has been a great experience, and there's more and more positive reinforcement Board and Train programs being created. And, you know, the last thing I'll add is Trainers Network. So if you're not sure of one in your area, oftentimes uh, we'll bring dogs in from out of state. Like I've had dogs who've traveled, so that's an option. Or if you're not sure in your area, but you see that there's different board and train, positive reinforcement trainers. Let's say, I don't know, I'm going to pick, let's say you're in Iowa and you don't have any close to you, but you know some in the Wisconsin area. Reach out to us. We might be able to figure out a way to have your dog travel here if they're fit, or we might be able or have different references that we can, point you to in your area. So definitely reach out if you're kind of exploring that avenue, because there's definitely, I'm very excited about it, but there's definitely more and more positive reinforcement board and train options popping up, which is exciting.
Yeah. So should they contact you directly at the Canine Learner, or was it this called the Trainers Network?
So they can definitely contact me. My website is www.thecaninelearner.com. And if I can't help you, I love helping people. So I'm always happy to point you in a direction. There's Force Free Trainers of Wisconsin, which is another reference. Looking up positive reinforcement board and train is an okay start, but it sometimes can point you down a rabbit hole. But reaching out to probably a certified positive reinforcement trainer is a good way to start, even if they don't offer board and train, because they probably can point you in the best direction for your area.
Yeah, yeah. I'm always happy to help people. I don't care if they don't end up working with me, but I want them to find some quality training where their dog's not going to be scared.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And if someone reaches out to me and I either am booked or it's not a fit, I will not leave you in the dark. I refer to my network of colleagues who also do board and train, because it's really important to me that you're supported and you feel set up for success. So we tend to do that for each other as trainers. So that's an awesome aspect. Collaboration is key.
Collaboration is key. All right. Well, thank you again. And thank you to everybody that joined us. All right. We'll say goodbye to Carly, and then I'll go on and talk about what we've got up next Monday. All right. Bye.
Woohoo. Thanks, Jennifer.
Thank you. Okay. So next Monday, you're going to get me, and I'm going to be talking about what is cooperative care. And just a little teaser, it's about low stress handling and care of our animals, from cleaning their ears to their eye drops to brushing their teeth to nails to helping them to go to the vet clinic to get those wellness exams and treatments as needed. I'm all about helping our dogs to have less stress in their lives, and I'm going to talk about how we can get started on that. So feel free to send us questions, or if you've got particular things that you have a hard time with your dog, you want to know where to get started, there's always a place that we can get started to help your dog and you to start feeling better. All right. Thank you everybody again for joining us on Monday night. Have a good rest of your evening.